Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And as you might have noticed, a lot of our footage on our recent videos has been video game footage. This is in part because this year, we at Camille's Harem want to do something different and analyze the storytelling in video games. These will be fun specials that we are going to try to release every month. And this is in part inspired by our enjoyment of video games and also our disdain for something that George R.R. Martin said a little while ago about video games and their lack of decent storytelling. Yeah, I get it, everyone is entitled to their opinions, but a guy like Martin throws around a lot of weight in the writing community, and his words caused quite a stir among many players and writers. A number of gamers have already voiced their objections to Martin, saying that games do have amazing stories. And we agree, and it's great that gamers have stood up in their own ways, but we think it is important that other writers get in on this conversation and explain how and why video games tell incredible stories of their own, which some of those narratives have even inspired us here at Camille's Harem. So, to start off this conversation, here is the entire Harem, Camille, Nathan, Scott, Spencer, and myself, talking about where we stand on this subject of storytelling in video games.
I feel, I have a lot of thoughts on this. One, I feel like it's very, hoity-toity of him to be like, well, video games, they aren't at the same level that books are, i.e., I feel like he's thinking...
That's almost a perfect...
Impression,
yeah.
I feel like he's... In a way, even if he's talking in a general sense, it feels like, dude, you think so highly of your own work. Just stop. Because there's so many things about his writing in general. I want to, personally attack him. But I'm like, dude, freaking chill. But at the same time, I just feel like that's a very ignorant statement to me.
Yeah.
Because the example that you showed us was a VR thing, which was like, that's an immersive thing.
And that's still
game.
bleeding edge, which means that it's not fully fleshed out.
Right, but his whole thing is, the thing that you were talking about is that he's made the comment that video games are incapable of telling a story like books or movies are, which is... that's why I'm like, well, what kind of games is he playing? Is he playing chess?
Tetris?
I just think I think it shows his ignorance and his age, frankly, to even think that. Because I can think of so many games just off of the top of my head that have such good stories that you really could not see. Like, for example, I've seen some talk that God of War might be made into either a movie. Into a movie. And I was like, ooh, I really don't know how I feel about this because I absolutely, I've been playing the reboot, so the 2018 game, and I freaking love it.
It's fantastic.
The storytelling is just incredible. And the characters are so good. And I was like, man, I really don't like the idea of them making a movie out of it because I don't think they'll do it justice. A TV show maybe because you
have more screen time.
Right, and you have more screen time and you're not as rushed, but I feel like if anything, movies a lot of time when they're an adaptation of something don't do something justice. Yeah. So I just feel like it is just so blatantly ignorant for him to say something like that.
Yeah, it really is. And one of the things that he's for the clip I was showing you guys, where he's trying to explain this is where we're going. He said VR is just it's kind of it's still being defined, it's still being cleaned up. It's like picking up an N64. N64 was amazing, but when you go back and you play it, unless you're playing GoldenEye, you're like, eh.
Yeah.
Although I still love N64 Smash Bros. But in any case, you kind of brought up there, you can be really immersed. And I think that's one of the things that he was talking from a VR experience, but that goes for all kinds of video games. Yeah. Video games have the same capability as a book to draw someone in, especially if the story is good.
Right.
Or if the gameplay is one that really brings you in as the player.
Well, and in my opinion, and this is something brought out by a game that came out just recently, that gameplay colors almost everything in video games.
Yeah.
And a lot of people focus so much on, like, the gameplay and, like, how the game actually runs, and less on the actual story that the game tells. And so, case in point here, just recently, Cyberpunk 2077 came out, and I'm not gonna lie, it had its issues, especially on consoles. It has its problems. But the freaking story is so freaking immersive, and it just drags you in. It is beautifully done storytelling.
Yeah.
It is wonderfully done storytelling, but everybody misses that because they're so focused on the gameplay.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think you're missing something if you lose out on that story element.
Right.
Exactly. I don't know. I think... So going back to, like, the whole VR comment, because in that clip, you know, he's pretty much saying, like, oh, VR is really immersive, it's got all these neat things, but there's not really any storytelling things. And granted, at the time of that video, there wasn't really anything in VR. Standard video games, like, yes, there are countless examples of excellent storytelling in video games, but now we have stuff like Half-Life Alyx, which is... I mean, I'm still working through it.
I love watching people play that.
Yeah, and it's a compelling story, you know. And granted, the draw of that is the gameplay, but with a good story to go along with it, you know, that's just the icing on the cake. That being said, it's sorry, sorry, that was my phone. That being said. So much of video games, like, you can't compare books to games and to movies or to music or to whatever, any other form of art and media.
Right.
Because they're so different. When it comes to video games, a lot of the storytelling is actually in each individual player. Because a book can only be read one way.
Yeah.
But a game can be experienced in infinitesimal amounts of ways.
Right.
Right? It's like, for example, Breath of the Wild. Part of the fun of that game is being like, oh my gosh, let me tell you what happened to me. I was doing this, and then all of a sudden this happened. And that's part of the fun of the game, because it's not like, you know, we're all experiencing the exact same game. I mean, we are. But we're all experiencing it in such wildly different ways that that's where the story is.
Right. I also feel like you have a visual...
component?
No. Like, an advantage. There's a visual advantage... I'm having a stroke. Advantage in video games because they help fill in the gaps that, you know, you don't really see in other types of medium. Like, in a book, you can write in, like, Easter eggs and everything, but when you're immersed in an entire world and you get to see and explore, you can, like, put pieces together.
Yeah.
You know...
I think, to kind of springboard off of that, it's... really fun to see video games take not only the story and drive you forward, but to interconnect the story with the gameplay.
Right.
For example, Celeste, which is one of my favorite platforming games I've ever played, is extraordinarily hard.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel like you're like just frustrated constantly. And it's like you get to a room and you're like, there's no way I'm going to beat this room. But then you just keep cracking at it, you get through it, and you beat it. And you're like, wow, I did that. You get to the next room, you're like, oh my gosh, there's no way I can beat this next room. But then you do it. And that, like, the way the game is played complements the story that is being told on top of it.
You get to feel her frustration.
Exactly.
And I think another great example is Undertale, where Undertale, you've got multiple paths that you can take the game, and the mechanics of the game are the way that the world works. In fact, like, that's one of the very first things that you're told when you meet Flowey. It's like, oh, this is what's happening. These are the rules. What do you want? You want love. How do you get love? You get it by fighting. Here, let me give you some love. And then he just starts trying to murder you. Starts trying to murder you right there. And you are given the choice as a player. It's like, and you don't even realize this until it's almost too late, your first time playing around. You are rewarded with the ending, depending on what kind of a player you are. And so either you're someone who the game then essentially murders you at the end, saying, oh, I love you. You're so great. We're going to be best friends. And then it's like, ha, ha, ha! It kills you because you've killed everyone else. Yeah. Or it's somewhere in between, and then you're where you fight the main boss, and it's so ridiculously hard. And then it's like, and then it teases you saying, that wasn't the best ending. Go back, wink. Or if you then get the pacifist ending, you just get clubbed over the head by feels. And And the thing is that throughout the game as it's going on, the game mechanics are the lore in the game, and you as the player decide how the story progresses. And for me, who loves like a choose your own adventure story, that's one of the things I love about video games in general. Unless it's something like playing like Legend of Zelda or Mario, where it's very much point A to point Z, and B through Y are all the adventures in between. And, like, unless it's something like that, you are creating your own story as you play.
Well, and I think going off of that too, you know, you also have an element in certain video games. Well, and this is the thing that I like in general. It's like we've had different examples of like what different types of games have to offer. I think another one is like when you have more agency in the choices that you're making, even if you aren't like the first player of Witcher. We'll use that as an example because I'm currently playing that one as well. You know, you're playing as Geralt most of the time, and then, you know, you have Ciri as well, but you have a lot of the times you make choices and your choices affect different outcomes. So like the Family Matters quest, Nate knows what I'm talking about. That's like one of the most like infamous quests in that game because your choices the entire time can cause such a different outcome. And it really makes it so much more meaningful and immersive when you're the one, you know, it weighs on you. It's like, even though I'm not first person, you connect to the character of Geralt more in that way because you're the one, you're making those decisions through him. And everything like has its impact. And, you know, that's something that I think is unique as, you know, compared to a lot of different creative mediums.
And one thing I always say is that this is like not like a riff on saying like on the other medium saying like,
no,
but like for instance like video games are the best because there are still certain limitations that video games have. Like for instance, a book is read a certain way, but the thing though is that a book will actually always give you more. Unless you're like reading a short story or a novella, if you pick up a novel, that novel can give you so much more. And while you can be immersed in a video game, the thing is that a book, you can constantly come back to it. That those Easter eggs never disappear. Those moments are always there for you again. And that's something that a game can't quite give you.
Yeah, and books don't age as fast as video games do.
Right.
I've been playing Final Fantasy VII for the first time, and oh my goodness, has that game aged?
We don't like polygons.
It's there's no definition in the boobs; they're just squares.
They're just Lara Croft squares.
Yeah.
Triangles.
Pyramid boobs.
There we go. Well, and I think as well, like, books allow your imagination to fill in the gaps because you don't have that visual aspect. So, like, the moral of the story is every medium, whether it's books, whether it's movies, music, art, video games, they all have something different to bring to the table. So to downplay one over the other, I just think is stupid. All in all, George R. R. Martin, you're a boomer. That's the moral of the story.
Absolutely is a boomer.
And I think just to kind of wrap this back to what you said earlier about like the God of War movie, it's like when you're taking something from one medium and moving it to the next one,
you'll always lose something.
You'll always lose something from the original medium because that is the original medium, especially if it's a good representation of a video like God of War. It's a great representation of what video games can do. You're gonna lose what makes it a video game by moving it to a movie. And what made it a video game in the first place is what made it so special, so good.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's like, you know, if you made God of War into a movie, you would miss all the elements of like all the stories that Mimir tells, or all the like stories that Kratos tells Atreus while they're in the boat. You know, you're not going to get that to the extent that you will in a movie, which I was telling Lars and Spencer this last night. Like, that adds so much to that world. Like, there's no way that it could just be translated so easily.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Any last thoughts?
George R. R. Martin, why are you making a video game if you don't believe that a story can be told in them?
Get out of here!
That's the thesis.
There's a lot of things with George R. R. Martin. Like, why are you working on this? It's because he can't finish anything.
No, and it's like, okay, first of all, Game of Thrones ended so stupidly, so you are poo-poo head.
Yep. So, yeah. Enjoy whatever medium of storytelling that you wish to enjoy. Just know that all of them have their pros and their cons.
Yeah.
And that I think more writers need to stand up for video games and just say, look, video games have some incredible stories to tell. And just because it's something that older writers aren't used to, younger writers like ourselves should not feel ashamed about saying how much we love video games, drawing inspiration from video games, or even if you want to, create your own video games with your own compelling stories.
I would love to. Let's do it. Camille's Harem's gonna fund a video game.
I'm going to say this. I have a video game idea in mind, but like small, like a much smaller one, like a murder mystery type video game.
It's so cute.
So
I mean,
it wouldn't be a big thing, but hey, like I thought about, I would love to do this.
my stories were originally an idea for a video game, and that I've just kind of built upon over a decade.
I gave them eyeballs.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna let you do the outro in your video, Lars.
All right, will do. I hope you enjoyed hearing from all of us here at Camille's Harem, and we'll be back with our own special videos and insights throughout the year on this subject. I'll be leading the charge with a look back at Undertale, and later diving into the story of Ori and the Blind Forest. The others will have their own specials, so if you want to see their amazing analyses and takes on games and their stories, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to receive notifications for when they come out. This is just the beginning of our conversation surrounding storytelling in video games, so we would love to hear from all of you as well, where you stand on the subject and what you think about it. Please comment down below and tell us what you think. And if you are an author looking for some solid writing advice, feel free to check out our other videos and our podcast, Camille's Harem, found on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, the works. Thank you so much for joining us on this adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.